not there all the time. And a message was on the thing. The guy actually left a hating on the answering machine. And I called Ellen in, and Ellen and I listened to it. And I said, okay, we got this guy on the answering machine. I called the police department. So I called the police department. Policeman comes over, and he looks at me and told me it's my job to trace to get the phone call traced.
Yeah.
So that told me in the Burlington Police Department, who I've given the devil to at times, they weren't going to protect me. And Derek Bell talks about that in his book. You know, that you have to be willing to go the last mile.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember something my dad once said to me. My father was cool. I mean, I had one of the greatest dads that ever walked the face of the earth. And he looked at me and he said, don't you die 1,000 times when you can only die once. You know, once they kill me, what they going to do, eat me? The very fact that this is Vermont, the very fact that there's such an overwhelming majority and that there's no critical mass means that you and I need to speak out because we're in a position to do that. We don't have, these young people have to make their livings here. They have to work here. And the price they pay for that is silent sometimes about those things that affect them most. They have to go along to get along sometimes.
But that goes against everything your father said, John.
See, they've been given...
He wasn't silent.
Well, but they've been given little tweaks of things.
I guess I don't agree with you. And I know you don't really mean what you're saying.
I'm not. I'm saying...
I mean, there was a Harry Thompson here once. He had a job.
Different generation.
He was outspoken. There was a Dolores Sandoval here
Different
once.
generation.
She had a job. She was outspoken.
Different generation.
There's a Jack Clemens. I could name...
Different generation.
Okay. I mean, there was a Niggerhead Mountain here once, and we stood up like crazy and knocked it down.
Different generation.
There was a cakewalk here once, and we stood up like crazy.
Different generation.
Okay. All right. I'll back off.
And the generation difference is that one of the mistakes that my generation made was that we believed integration was going to work.
Yeah, I know.
And so a number of middle-class black people in general have bought into that. And just like battered women sometimes who want to be loved and liked and everything, they are willing to pay the price for that. And then another thing is you don't have a critical mass in Vermont that is going to stand up to that group that's going to be silent.
I know.
And that's the real problem. The real problem is there's not a critical mass that's going to do that. They're just not going to do that. In fact, what they're going to do is what a lot of them do is make me the evil person.
Then I have to come back to the question I asked you right from the beginning. What is the fuel which keeps you going, given the fact that there isn't likely to be a critical mass, at least in your lifetime here?
This is New England.
Yeah.
New England is the least diversified section of the country.
Yes.
My child was attacked in New England.
Yes.
Pretty badly. Took me 9 months to get her case investigated. No. My dad didn't raise me to turn tail and run, see. You know, I don't have that liquid courage. And not that I'm overly brave or better than anybody else, but I'm not going to keep quiet. And I don't need you in my life if the part of the price I have to pay is that I need to keep quiet about those things that affect me. I mean, as you know, the last girlfriend I had was 3 months before I had my second operation, and she lived in Jersey. I haven't had a steady girlfriend in Vermont because I'm not willing to pay the price of that. I'm not going to sit there. You're not going to say what you want to say to me, say anything you want to say around with me so that you can, so that I can be with you. No, I'm not doing that. I'm not playing that game. I'm not doing that. And it's not that I'm against any kind of relationship, because you know I've had all kind of relationships. But I'm not going to play that game up here that's asked me to play. Oh, no. Mm-mm.
So where do we go? How do we recruit more people like John Tucker? How do we get more people to stand up? How do we get the larger community to stand up?
Yeah.
You talked about the school system, for example.
Shame, blame,
where-
and guilt is not what I'm into.
No, me either.
No, I mean,
me either. But
you know.
wait a minute. But the values, when you described a little while ago about the little black child who was made to feel that he or she is the problem, okay? Is that the message that white people want their children
I
to,
think for some of them, they
to
want that
learn?
message.
Well, if that's true, then the society is more messed up than I thought it was.
Or else they wouldn't be taking an 8 or 9 year old in the way they would. They wouldn't be in denial.
Well,
You wouldn't
that's-
have to call the Human Rights Commission.
Well, that's the question
Or the
I'm
state
asking.
attorney general.
That's the question I'm asking. How do we get white people, more white people, because there are some. I mean, certainly Phil Hoff has put his...
Gretchen Morris.
And I
you
could
know,
name... And
but
I could
these
name
rural
I could
areas are
name
the
several.
toughest because they're
But how do we
smaller.
get more people to stand up and say this is wrong? That every child must be protected.
Nothing's
every
changed
child.
much from 30 years ago when you used to talk about this all the time. What happened in
John.
Boston.
Yes, I know.
As you watch mothers with children in their hands
I'll never forget
spit
it.
on
I will never get
and
that
throw
picture
rocks
out
at
of-
little black children.
I will never get that picture out of my... Every time I close my eyes, I see it. How
Well-
mothers could possibly hold their own children in their arms and then spit on and throw rocks on little black children on their way to the newly integrated schools.
Well-
I'll never forget that as long as I live.
There's,
So how do you fight that? How do you get more people to say this is wrong?
we just need to keep at it. You know, it's a sad statement for this day and age. You know, I mean, it is sad. I mean, there's no reason for Diallo to be shot down with 36 bullets in his chest.
Nope,
And the people who do it walk away.
nope. And there's no reason for a 14-year-old boy who was picked up by the police mistakenly because he wasn't involved in whatever it was, and then a gun pulled and put in his head?
I know,
Do you know what that means to a parent?
of course. Of course I do. And
And that's Vermont.
Yes.
That's not Boston.
that's not Boston.
not
That's
New York
not New
City.
York City.
That's
Vermont.
Vermont. Okay.
And the other thing is leadership.
Well,
Okay? You have a leadership. I mean, Vermont's leadership, it's almost incestuous. It's so small. Somebody always knows somebody, or they're friends. And he's a good guy, you know. And you know, one of the problems with interracial relationships in Vermont is that whole situation. I've been engaged in interracial, but under different circumstances. You know, but and I've been with women where a man, I wouldn't pick up on it because of women's instinct about how men can be toward women, can say that. But if you do that up here about a person of color does that about a white person, and he'll instantly, he and she will have 20 people at their defense. How could he possibly or she not possibly be a nice person? They treat me nice.
right.
Well, they treat you nice because you look like them. You went to school with them. You're friends. But I'm not their friend. And I represent something to them that they don't know. And the other thing is, they consider me arrogant. I'm not arrogant. I'm just proud of being who I am. I have never wanted to be anything other than who I am. I've never wanted to slick my hair back. I never wanted to have Jerry curls. And I've never been interested in going to Harvard or Yale, particularly. I find black women attractive first and foremost. I mean, you know, so, but, and I am not going to grovel to be their friends.
Is this part of your arrogance? Is that,
Yes, they consider that arrogant.
Is that what's arrogant?
That's what's considered arrogant on their, by my part,
Okay.
you know? And I'm not going to sing and dance for them. If that's arrogant, so be it.
Is your project healthy?
Very healthy.
Will it survive?
I worry about it. Without me, or somebody like you, no. It'll be something else.
You know, that's the story of all these movements in Vermont. That's the story of the University of Vermont, for example, that good things happen as long as a person is there. And when that person is gone, it never gets institutionalized, and so it falls apart. And if that's what you're saying about the Racial Justice and Equity Project, then my heart sinks, because I know you're going to leave here soon.
Well, I'm going to leave someday.
I know
It's
you
not
are.
going to be anytime soon.
Well, but you will leave.
Eventually, in order for me to have a relationship, which I've gotten to my point in my life that I want to, yes, it will probably mean that I have to leave.
Because that Racial Justice and Equity Project has been one very, very important item and element in this community. People who had no recourse to anything were always able to find you. I'm serious. People have told me that over and over and over. I was on the Human Rights Commission. A lot of people don't want to go to the Human Rights Commission, and I think it was a good organization, and still is. But you were right there in the street, you see. People didn't have to go anyplace. They didn't have to interact with some agency and so forth.
Well, because
And there you were.
one is
And there
I
you
don't
still
put them
are.
through a whole lot of unnecessary
Well,
motions, you know, and, you know, the structure around these issues are built to make it impossible to do anything.
you noticed that.
Yeah. You know, by the time they fill out 22 forms, ask 22 questions, people become them. Their children are being hurt. They've been called nigger on their job. They've been denied rights that they should have on their job. And, you know, the structures are built to make it impossible. And consequently, it's because another thing is lawyers in this country can't tell the difference between right and wrong. It's not, for them, it ain't that simplistic. You know, and it ends up sometimes that the victim ends up being victimized.
Yeah.
And it's a tragedy. So consequently, I'm not defined by I have a good board, people like Ed Everett, and then I worked with Ellen Taylor and people like that, the board at the Peace and Justice Center. So, and they know, I wouldn't be there. See, I'm not going to have them tell me what to say. I'm not going to have them, they're not going to wait for me to have a reaction to it. And I've had policemen tell me, well, you always assume that the black person is innocent. I said, I'm just kind of counteract you who always assume that they're guilty. You know, shock of shocks. There's an irrational thought that I may believe that the police and the criminal justice system could be racist. I mean, and I'll give you some examples. 20 years ago when I was up here for a short time, I worked in the correctional department. As racist a department as can exist up here.
Right.
20 years later, it's not much different. They think they're better, you know, because they give you this diversity rap. Diversity means everything but Afro-American and Native American.
Yep, always has and probably always will, John,
Yeah, and
unfortunately.
that doesn't mean that Asians and Hispanics, some of them don't go through a lot of hell.
Oh, they do.
Because they do.
That's not the point.
I'm not trying to demean that.
It is not, that's
But
not the point at all.
when a high school locally, during Black History Month, gives a Bosnian play as part of Black History Month, forgive me if I'm just a little contemptuous of that high school and the people who run it. What? We can't celebrate Black history? No people have given more to this society. You know, they're constantly stealing our music. You know?
You know, when the wall in Germany came down, you know what they were singing, don't you? We shall overcome.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, these things somehow managed to free everybody in the world except black people. Very interesting.
And black families, when they're wrong and move into the wrong neighborhood, still get crosses burned or their windows broken out and
That's
their children
right.
harassed.
That's correct.
You know, so I'm not a radical. I'm just a person that's reacting to the reality of black America's life. And I'm just not one of those people that can take the blow willingly. You can't beat me and tell me you love me. You can't slash my child's face and tell me you care for me. You can't deny my oldest girl her rights. And these 3 kids have done everything that I asked them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I see them being abused,
Mm-hmm.
and now my grandchildren, I'm not going for it. I'm not going to sit around and say, well, Yassa boss, I sure is glad that y'all like me. Yes, sir, this is sure is fun.
And thanks for the job.
And thanks for the job, boss, because I know you loves me. Please, get out of here.
John, I don't know what in the world we're going to do without you. I sure hope you don't leave before I do.
Well, one of the things that will happen, I mean, you know I've had 2 open heart surgeries.
Yeah, I know.
Eventually, like my dad say, I'm going to have to take the A train. But I tell you one thing I won't do. I won't take the A train saying, I wish I had, no. See, I'm not going to die 1,000 times. I can only die once.
Right.
So I hope people don't misread this conversation. I mean, that's kind of who I am. I mean, I have a geopolitical view that I am constantly trying to react to. I have a personal view, and some of my friends who are made up of a wide range of people will tell you, I care for them and love them as much as everyone else in the group. And you saw some of them not too long ago. You were with them. You know, I don't hate white people. I hate the institution that affects my life the most and my children's lives and large friends and large communities, the institution of racism. I hate it. I despise it.
So do I. So do I.
And it amazes me that they think that I'm supposed to laugh and smile about that.
Well, not everybody thinks that.
Large portion.
I know, of course. I know that. I live with the same forces you live with, but not everybody.
I live in a state where I read a guy's parole was being taken away, and the probation officer, parole officer, wrote a report that said he drove a pickup truck and listened to rap music. Now I want to know what that has to do with him being taken off parole. And everybody thought it was all right for her to write that. She would catch him in front of people and scream at him. This was a grown man. You know, and there's a way of calling you the N-word without ever calling you the N-word.
Yeah.
Behavior dictates that. And that goes on all the time up here. And I guess the reason why I don't have a girlfriend up here, I don't want to put myself at the mercy of the criminal justice system. I don't want one policeman, I don't even want them to visit my house. And the other thing is they have a police chief who patronize me. Don't patronize me. I was a grown man before she knew what a grown being is, or him. Don't patronize me. You know? And I find that more distasteful than anything.
Well, you make the forces seem overwhelming.
The forces are overwhelming at times, but at the same time, we all know that we can't give up this struggle, because if we did, they'll just walk right over us.
Yeah, I know. What did Derek Bell say? Racism in this country, will always be with us.
Always be with us.
But we have to fight it anyway.
We have to stand up to it.
We have to stand up to it.
And we'll have some victories, and then it'll come and it'll come back in a different form. And history verifies that.
Yeah, I know. I know.
There was emancipation, right? And then came Reconstruction.
Right.
Woo!
Then came the Night Riders.
The Night Riders, the Hoods. I mean, we're 6 million Ku Klux Klansmen in 1928 marched down Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington, D.C. These men were engaged in anti-Semitism, racism, against Catholicism.
Right.
And they were giving her right 6 million. They were, if they're not a terrorist organization, don't tell me about Al Qaeda when you can't tell me about that.
Oh, boy.
You know? And white America sits there and says, well, that's freedom of speech.
Right.
There's one thing when you speak it, there's another thing when you lynch me. Another thing when you murder me and get it away with, or you murder my child and get away with it. So the institution, unfortunately, is racism. And the good people, there are a lot of good people, unfortunately, had it happen. And I said this Sunday to you, to a group of people. When they're in a room and there's only white people in the room, and those words come out, and people just sit there and they let those words happen.
That's
and they
right.
give credence to it.
That's right. How many people stand up and say,
Because it's hard to stand up to a group that you're part of and tell them you're wrong, because they'll make them pay too. I mean, that's what the abolitionists found out about.
yeah, John, but
That's what Morris Dees lives with every day of his life.
what did Rodney Patterson say? You do this because not to do it is even harder.
Absolutely.
And so wouldn't you expect somebody to stand up and say,
No,
look,
because
I don't accept that.
I think that for white folks to stand up to it, boy,
The
they
club
are
is something, isn't
they're
it?
the club. They're in
The
the club,
club is
you know. It
unbelievable.
means a lot of good things. It means a new SUV.
The club
you
is
know.
unbelievable.
It
And no
means-
matter
it
what
means-
you do or how you
Oh,
live
yeah.
your life, you will never
Oh, yeah.
belong to the
It's
club.
like-
I want you to know that.
Oh, yeah.
Just in case you don't know it. You'll never
It's like
belong
that
to the
ad
club.
Tiger Woods first did.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, yes.
He said, my name is Tiger Woods.
Yes.
I'm the only man to win 3 national amateur championships in a row, men's amateur championships.
Right.
However, there are 1,842 golf clubs in America I
Then
can't be a member
still
of.
can't be a member of.
That's right.
That's right.
So, you
Oh,
know,
boy.
I don't know how the privilege, and it's hard for white people to give up that privilege. It's hard for them to give up the privilege. I mean, it's a privilege to do that. They don't understand. They get angry when you bring that up.
I know.
But I'm not attacking them for that. They got the privilege. I mean, it's a privilege. It's a whole. You know, they assume. And a friend of mine, she was talking about, she was on a panel, and she realized the white people on the panel were talking about the same thing the black people was, but that black people were less hopeful that it could be changed. But being a white person, she knew, she dealt with it, that it could change, because that's
Of
what
course.
that's what white people work for, is change. Of course it does.
And that's the way things work out for them.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That doesn't give me the right to blow them up or shoot them. I mean that. You know, and King taught that, and a lot of us. I mean, you know, we don't go around blowing up buildings.
Well, we certainly are searched as if we, in
Well,
fact, do. That's been one of the very interesting experiences. as
the
far
interesting
as I'm
thing about that
concerned.
statistic is the statistics that came out of Washington, for example. White women are raped, maimed, and murdered 84% of the
Right.
time by white men.
Right.
Yet when they polled white women, over 83% of them said the 2 men they're most afraid of were black men and Hispanic men.
Right.
Well, if they would look at the same statistics in the black and Hispanic community, the same statistics hold true for Hispanic women with Hispanic men and black men with black women. And consequently, you know, what's different is Hispanic women and black women get that and know that.
Right.
And as this woman in D.C. said, white women's racism gets them murdered and sometimes. Because they're trapped by the same institution.
They're trapped by the same institution.
Yes. You know, which is you know, a thing of 24.6% of the population of the United States is white men. Yet they control 97% of the government and most of the wealth. And wrote the original Constitution only for white men. It wasn't written for anybody else. It wasn't written for white women either. White women got to vote in 1920 in America. By law, black men could vote before they could,
That is correct.
you know?
As a matter of fact, help them get it.
Yes. So consequently, this institution of race has served people well. There are people who make hay at this. They need this. They need this to keep it in power, to keep themselves in power. They need the institution. They need the separation. They got a professor running around one of the campus talking about how separation is necessary. It's not in my lifetime, not in my children's lifetime, not in their children's lifetime will this end. There are too many privileges. There's too much power that goes with it. I mean, and I can't think of a better institution of power where it's just shown blatantly than basketball, football, and baseball. You know, the greatest stars are black and people of color, and they don't own any teams. They are not the coaches. They are not the announcers. You know, I mean, they're just high-paid slaves.
Well, that's the whole history of the jazz industry. We made the music, they owned it.
Well, we seem to be coming to an end.
Yeah, we're trying to get there.
You know, I mean, we are trying to get
We're
there.
trying to get there.
And we will be back for 6 and 7. But we want to thank you for your attendance. If you have any questions, please send them to the Peace and Justice Center. And I'm sure there's a lot of, if you're unfortunate enough to have seen this program, there will be some discontent about some of the things that I have to say. And once again, Larry, it's a delight having you.
I've enjoyed everything you said, John. Not enjoyed it, but enjoyed hearing it from you.
Well, it's a tragedy.
It is. It's very sad. It's very sad, and yet
You know,
I'm so glad you're here.
And the thing is that we, you know, and Vermont does it too, no different than the rest of America. I mean, Vermont is a wonderful place, but they never make it clear who it's wonderful for. You know, and some people move to Vermont because it is so not so diverse, and they deny that. I mean, they like it that way. They want to keep it that way. That's what Take Back Vermont was about. I mean, so in closing, I want to say thank you. Thank you, Ed Everett and Lori.
Always.
And always.
Always.
And the people here at Channel 15. She's back there in the control room doing her thing as usual. And she's not going to smile. She never smiles when she works.
She's smiling now.
Okay. And thank you for the chance to talk about these things. I know that it's not an easy subject. Generalization, unfortunately, is part of the process. I just want to say in closing, thank you, goodbye, and please get in touch with the Peace and Justice Center if you have any questions.